What is up, everybody, and welcome to episode 93 of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Roscoe, and what another fun show we have for you guys this week. Is it seems like I'm hosting every show nowadays, but no, of course, guys, everyone's back from Saratoga, so hopefully, not hopefully, I know they all had a good trip out in Saratoga. Trust me, I heard all about it once they all got back. But everyone, welcome in. Thank you guys all so much for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. And thank you all for the kindness and support that you showed me and the rest of the guys that showed up last week while we were covering for the guys in Saratoga. Obviously, Bettin N Boozin last week covering Bing Crosby Day, and then Paul and I covering Jim Dandy Day in Saratoga for Picks and Ponies on Thursday, and then Saturday morning with myself and Justin Sampson of Equine Edge talking the early Pick5 on Jim Dandy Day. All did absolutely phenomenal. So I just wanted to say thank you guys all so much for all the gracious support you guys showed myself and my guests last week. But as you see scrolling the bottom of the screen, please go down below the video player, hit the like button on this episode, and please hit the subscribe button. It's the easiest and best way to help out our channel, because not only is it 100% completely free, it shows us that you guys are liking the content, and it will push this video and other podcasts out into the YouTube algorithm and hopefully bring like-minded horse players like yourself to the HHH Racing Podcast. Also, while you're down there near the subscribe button, please hit the bell notification. That way you'll be notified of any brand new or live podcasts that come out here on the HHH Racing Podcast channel. Of course, for that, we thank you. Also, scrolling right now, you'll see the next podcast that we have is tomorrow, Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, with Howard, Pete, and Paul, Picks and Ponies, talking Whitney Day at Saratoga and the late Pick5 on Saturday. It's a fantastic card. There's 3 grade 1s. They're talking late Pick5. They'll probably mention there's 3 grade 1s on Saturday, guys. It's not a show that you guys are going to want to miss. So 8 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, right back here on the HHH Racing Podcast YouTube channel, or on X at H Kravitz for Howard, or myself at AP Roscoe K, as you see right there on the banner. Also, I post free selections, and we'll be posting Saratoga every single day, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for this week. So follow me over there if you guys want those for free. But going on, guys, of course, every single episode of Bettin N Boozin and on the HHH Racing Podcast is available in audio form. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchors, where we post those. So if you're more of an audio person, or you just want to listen to it maybe in the car or maybe at the gym, something like that, in audio form, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor are those places to do so. So please go rate, review, and subscribe over there. Saratoga and Del Mar only power picks are now still available, guys. You can get them week by week basis. The deadline is Thursday at midnight to get your Friday power picks. You'll get it Friday, Saturday, and Sunday morning every single day. Of course, not accounting for scratches, so you guys will have to keep an eye on those if you guys do buy them. But however, again, every single you sign up for the weekend membership, it's discounted if you're already a subscriber to our normal power picks, which I'll bring up in a second. But hhhracingpodcast.com is where you go to do that. And on the top, you'll see power picks tip sheet. Click that button. You can sign up through PayPal or through Venmo to get your name, and make sure you include your email as well. And I talked about the normal power picks already, guys. Very affordable, $15.99 a month, only $4 a weekend, and you get 2 full tracks of price plays, spot plays, Pick5 grids, everything you need to be successful on any given Saturday. We got you covered over here on the HHH Racing Podcast. Power picks well in the black with the ROI since February of 2021 when this podcast was started. That link is also in the description. And as I mentioned it before, for the aforementioned Saratoga and Del Mar only power picks, you can view previous editions of those power picks before you buy them, or if you just want to learn more about us, hhhracingpodcast.com is the place to do so. One last thing before I bring on my co-host here, I want to say one thing, and they helped. The boys all held a meet and greet out in Saratoga. Of course, I was sadly not able to attend, but they said such good things about that meet and greet. So if you guys did come out to Saratoga and meet the guys in the Jim Dandy bar, they had a blast. Thank you guys all so much for showing up. Again, the support you guys show to us means the world to us. So thank you guys all for showing out and showing your support and all the kind words about the podcast that you guys brought up when you guys got there on Saturday. And of course, I wasn't there, but hopefully I'll be able to see you guys down the line, either at Keeneland or at the Breeders' Cup this year at Del Mar. But guys, let's bring on my co-hosts and we'll get right into the show. Then we'll go to the chat as well. So if you guys are here on YouTube, on the right-hand side of the screen, even on X, it's at the bottom of the screen. If you're on mobile, please go and type. You guys can feel free to type anything in the chat. We read every single chat and would love to bring it up, especially if you have opinions in the later races. This card has been out since probably last Sunday or something along those lines. So guys, let's bring on my co-host and we'll move back. We have full, after a couple weeks of, one co-host, we have a full house today for you guys. Everyone's here from New Jersey, Patrick Council, from the Ohio State University, Charlie Freeman, and from the University of Kentucky, Noah Maher. Boys, we are back in town. How's it going?
Back Feels like forever.
Yeah. What's up, Charles? What's up, boys? It's good to have everybody back together. I saw some pictures in the chat. Heard you guys got to meet the quarterback of the best college football team in the country this year, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and the best coach of the NCAA this year, of course, as well. Heard about that.
I won't comment on that because I heard he was a really nice guy. So
I'm sure.
I'm going to say the opposite. I have to say the opposite.
Yeah, right. Just a balance. What's up, brother? Anyway, let's keep moving on, guys. Racing Downwind is here, of course. Katie, of course, is here. Racing Downwind arrived just to beat Katie, and Katie says, "Wish you were here before." You got to be quicker than that, Katie. Guys, thanks so much for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. Jim Pillars is in the chat. It says, had the good fortune to spend time this weekend with Noah and Patrick, who are fantastic guys. Maybe hold off a little bit on that. I'm not too sure about that, but so nice, in fact, that I can no longer pick on them. Sorry, Kyle and Charlie. You both are still open game. Jim, I'm sure we'll meet at some time in the future. But yeah, like I said, thanks for coming out and meeting the guys. Of course, with everything you had going on, it meant a lot to them for you to show up and, everything like that. So thanks a lot, Jim. Terry Frank, of course, is here. Mike Saletta is here. Tanner Hawkins, what's going on, my man? Thanks so much for joining this show. Paul Conlon, miss you, Mr. Roscoe. Wish the best day ever. I'm glad you had a great time, Paul.
I hope he had a fun night that night that me and Noah saw.
I'm sure he did.
He'll know what we're talking about.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, trust me. I met him at Keeneland, Mr. North Dakota himself. I met him at Keeneland. Fantastic guy and an absolute character. Love that guy. But either way, thanks so much for joining the show, Paul. Greatly appreciate it. Hopefully at Keeneland's still on your radar for a road trip. Absolutely, Paul. One of the first 2 weekends for sure this year at Keeneland. I will be there. So hopefully I get to see you there. Thomas Spinoza is here as well. Howard's here. He says 56,000 pick 6 carryover tomorrow at Saratoga. That's good to know. Howard, thanks so much for joining the show. Equine Edge, guys, thanks so much, guys, for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. Glad to see you guys here. And then Brad Anderson says, even Bettin N Boozin crew, good to see everyone back together to kick off Whitney weekend. We miss you, Kyle, but we'll see you for the big day in September. Of course, Brad, thanks so much, man, for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. Guys, let's move it along here. Let's keep going. Hopefully we can get you guys out at a normal time without spending too much time on these races. The late pick 5 on Saturday starts, or Friday. See, that's strike one. That's just habit at this point. On Friday, since we are covering Saratoga Friday of Whitney weekend, which is still a fantastic card with 2 graded stakes. I'm bringing up the Equibase right now, guys, so you guys can take a look. It starts in race number 6, which is an allowance optional claiming 35,000, or starter optional claiming, 35,000 going a mile on the inner turf course, and it draws a full field of 12, which is nothing short of what we expect from Saratoga this time of year. The morning line favorite, in which we actually have morning lines and we actually have numbers, guys. This is fantastic after 2 weeks straight of Del Mar. Number 5, Unleash the Power, is your morning line favorite. Joel Rosario and Al Stahl. Second choice, number 4, Palace View for Irad and Mark Cassie. Third choice, all the way to the inside, the number 1, Gilded Kraken for Luis Saez and Joe Sharp. Guys, bringing on to our picks on the screen right now. You see 2 of them are going with the morning line favorite, the number 5, Unleash the Power. Patrick is going with number 1, Gilded Kraken. I'm going a little bit off the beaten path, and the boys going with number 10, Emirates Road, off the claim for Brad Cox. Charlie, I'll let you go first since you guys have the morning line favorite. No, obviously, feel free to jump in as well. Charlie, what did you like most about the number 5, Unleash the Power?
Yeah, for me, I think the reason I kind of got intrigued with Unleash the Power was, considering some of those others that I have in the mix with Palace View and Gilded Kraken. This is a little bit of a fresher face. I know this one ran against Ghostly Prince last year, but is one that it's only run twice in 2024, and I thought both efforts were pretty solid. Obviously, the effort two back more so with only losing by a neck and closing pretty hard late. Obviously, the pace was a nice setup, and I thought the trip was decent as well and was nice execution actually from Joel Rosario. I got to give him his flowers for a guy who I sometimes am a little harsh on. I thought the effort last time out was a little frustrating because I think he had more horse than the effort kind of showed. But in the replay, I know we can't show it, but the horse got steadied and didn't really have anywhere to go towards the end. So he kind of just eased the horse up over the line. And that's why you kind of see the horse got within a length and then sort of, looked like it faded back. But that's why I can't, encourage our viewers enough to watch the replay. But I think the 5 could sit a really nice trip here and be close enough within striking distance to end up rolling on by. And I'm wondering, Noah, is that kind of what you saw as well, as this 5 could just sit a pretty nice trip?
Yeah, I'm sure we all saw it. There's not a ton of speed in the race, and I expect the 5 to be sitting in a good spot, probably right behind the leaders in that second flight that they have him there. This is kind of normally the type that I would be against. The 1 for 14s with 3 seconds, and not really showing a ton of improvement, but will run a good race every once in a while. But I think this is just the easiest field that he's faced in quite a while. He's been facing some pretty good company. Charlie mentioned it, that race back at the end of May, he ran very well. And then last time he had the trouble, and that was a pretty good race. The horse that finished just in front of him, the 4th place finisher, came back and won with an 83 at Ellis. So I just think he's been facing some good company. He's going to sit a good trip. And Al Stahl's had a limited barn there so far, but his horses have done well. So I'm gonna go with Unleash the Power.
I completely agree with you guys. I have him in 3rd. Like I said, these last few are a little bit indicative. Maybe his running, the only thing that I thought was maybe his running styles kind of changed. Granted, they have been quicker paces going 112, but he has been farther back than he normally likes to be, at least early in his career. But if he runs like time for him says, like right off the speed, this horse is easily the horse to beat in this race. And if you're getting 3-1 on a horse that should sit right behind the speed in a race with not a whole lot of it, that could be the ticket to victory. So Unleash the Power makes a ton of sense from that regard. Patrick, you have the number 1 Gilded Kraken, who I'll say I don't have anywhere, but both of the other guys have him in 2nd. So obviously I might be missing something. That last race was very good. What'd you like most about Gilded Kraken?
Yeah, you know what? You look at the last race. Obviously, there's a couple horses coming out of that race that are in this one. Opening week at Saratoga on that Friday, and I just thought, got out of the gate good. Kind of sat a nice trip, and then towards the top of the stretch, had to deal with a little bit of trouble, and kind of got bounced back a little bit and couldn't get a run, like the number 4 Palace View did. So I look for this horse to be more forwardly placed. I know Noah talked about the pace, how that's a question in here. With not much speed, I do think this horse is shown, and it has been on dirt. And then the one time the horse actually did win going at this distance at Fairgrounds last year at the mile, setting the pace and being forwardly placed. So I think in a race like this, especially with the rail, Louis got to be aggressive here, and try and get out there early, because in this field, Saratoga, you just got to get out early, because closing late sometimes can get a little tough and traffic could be there.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Obviously, I'll get you guys' opinions in a sec. With the number 1, the horse that was kind of mentioned was number 4, Palace View, from Mark Cassidy. IRAD takes up the mount here. This is a horse that last time was very far back, but closed with like an absolute train. That was 3 weeks ago at Saratoga. But it's just a matter of, can this horse actually have pace to run into? I was completely between the 1 and the 4. For my top 3, I definitely wanted to have the 5 in there. I could easily replace this one with the 4 with the 1. I think they're very similar in that regard, but I think the 4 might be a little bit more pace dependent than the 1 is. But however, Mark Cassidy, not a guy that's usually known to ship very well, except, he obviously runs his contingent in Florida over the winter, and then a lot of the times at Woodbine over the summer. But man, has he brought the goods to Saratoga so far. 7 for 22, 32%, as you guys see on the screen right now. Definitely brought them to, he's shipping them to win. But this is one that might have a little bit of trouble pace scenario wise come Friday. But still, I think this is definitely one you need to at least have in the mix, especially if you're playing this race vertically. Noah, you and I are the only 2 people that have Emirates Road in here. And Brad Cox is the one guy that, for as big as he is, you don't see him claim a lot of horses. And I can show everyone these numbers, these claiming numbers, as soon as this has the ability to load for me, which doesn't seem like it ever does nowadays. But first after claim by for Brad Cox in the last 5 years, he's only had 61 starts off the claim in the last 5 years. And for a guy as big as Brad Cox running, like I said, 4,000 runners, 4,000 starts in the past 5 years, only 61 of those have been off the claim, yet he wins at a 30% clip. Granted, again, $1.54 ROI, but still, the point is still there. No, I think this one, if the race doesn't set up exactly for horses like the number 4 or anything like that, if he can at least navigate the outside post, which I agree could be an issue for this one, I just think if he sits close up to someone like the 5, he's going to have a good shot at a better price.
Yeah, I can't disagree with anything you just said. You're definitely right. That the claiming angle was definitely a big one for me. He's a guy that's he's not really in that game, so he'll pick his spots, and when he does, he normally his horses run very well. This horse just kind of has the like all or nothing kind of fashion. And last time he was the favorite in that race, who he finished a ways back behind Harvard, who's also in the race, who I think is not impossible. This one kind of had a sneaky trip where kind of got stuck in traffic in the lane and kind of was having trouble switching leads. So I don't know. This was one where I didn't really know what to do, but I think you only have to guess that Brad Cox is going to move this horse up. And if the works are any indication, as long as Giroux doesn't have him too far back, then I think definitely one you need to consider.
You hit that on the head for me, man. You know how I feel about that. I don't need to explain to people. I think the grin on my face tells all about what Noah just said. But look, I think even for how much I hate on him, I think he's an upgrade from Cancel. And if he can get the trip I'm envisioning, which I'll give you a hint, is not 16 lengths back for what this horse wants to do, I think he might have a good shot, at least from 2 back. Granted, against easier competition, but still on the turf. That's the type of trip I'm envisioning hopefully for Emirates Road at a much better price. But guys, we'll keep it moving here. I'm going 10-4-5. Patrick, I'll let you talk about one horse we didn't really talk about real quick. Jersh is for Graham Motion and Manny Franco at 15-1, which you don't usually get that price at. Granted, won that state bred maiden by a lot, but again, easier competition. That last race, maybe not the best, but 78 definitely fits in this field.
Yeah, and I think this horse wants to go shorter. And like you said, has been facing definitely competition that hasn't been up to what is going to face on Friday. So we'll have to improve. But, in a field that's kind of, spotty all over the place, especially with trainer Graham Motion, he's known to hit it decent numbers up at Saratoga. So I'm going to take a shot, and you'll see on my best bets, there's a little bet I got going there with this horse. Maybe something called a key. I don't know what the beginning is, but you'll see.
Maybe the boss can expound on that one, but obviously, guys, we'll keep it moving along. I'm going 10-4-5. Patrick's going 1-5-2. Charlie's going 5-1-4. Noah's going 5-1-10. Guys, moving into race number 7, which is a state bred N1X going 7 furlongs on the dirt, field of 7. And man, I mean, you try and separate these horses a lot of the time. David Aragona certainly didn't do too much separating. You have 4 horses within, 1 tick of each other. 5-2 is your 3-1 morning line favorite. Funny enough, that the 1 horse on the inside, Santana, jumps on for DePaz. Second choice is shared between the number 5, Foxy Cara, and the number 6, Maggie T. And the number 7, Carol T, is your 4-1, technically 4th choice for Vasquez and Jimenez. And I'll bring up our picks right now, guys. We're all pretty similar, which, again, 4 horses, basically almost 5 horses right next to each other. It's bound to be pretty close. 2 of us are going with the number 3, Santagata for Patrick and Charlie are both going with Santagata. No one's going with the number 1, 5-2. I'm going with the number 6, Maggie T, who everyone else has in third. No, I'll let you start since you're kind of by yourself here, but of course everyone has the one in second. Otherwise, what'd you like most about the number 1, 5-2?
Yeah, this is a very strange race, and I would advise people to not take less than 5-2 on 5-2. I get it. But anyway,
teacher jokes.
Yeah,
made Howard happy.
This is just a kind of a strange race, and I think the fact that Horacio De Paz has 2 in here, can mean something. He can kind of, I assume he's probably going to send with the 3 and Carmouche, because there's not really a ton of speed on paper. So I think the 3 will probably be the fastest of the bunch, and then I assume 5-2 will probably be in that stalking position. And normally I wouldn't necessarily like the angle of claim away from Linda. But the race was pretty decent. Getting back to state bred companies, a little more classy than I think a couple of these. And I just envisioned him sitting a really good trip. It's not a strong opinion, but I'm going with 5-2 here.
In this race is definitely, it's definitely hard to have a very strong opinion. Obviously, Charlie and Patrick are lockstep. Patrick, I'll let you go first. Santagata for Horacio De Paz. Kendrick Carmouche hops aboard. He's been aboard last 2 times. Going off that last race, obviously light on the numbers, but also lightly raced. Patrick, muted. Unlucky. Unlucky.
Attaboy.
Yeah. Put me on the spot there. Last time faced Empire Magic, who I don't know if you guys remember. That was closing day at Belmont at the Big A, and there was a big mandatory payout pick-6. That was the first leg. And that horse was like 1-4 odds or something crazy, and sat right off the pace and won really well. That horse was really well meant. I think can improve off that. And in a spot like this where Noah hit on, odds wise, I don't want to. I need more than either 9-2 or more, because this spot it's just wide open, and I'm not really sure pace figure wise where Santagata is going to sit. But I'm hoping, Kendrick can be aggressive in here and be forwardly placed. I don't know if that's what you saw too, Charlie, and what kind of your angle was on Santagata.
Yeah, I'd say my angle was just that this is a race where, I would say the field isn't very talented, and there's a lot of horses that have already run a lot, and we've kind of seen who they are and what they can be. Whereas I think the 3 with only 2 starts has the most upside, and I get that the buyer figures aren't amazing or anything that jumps off the screen, but nonetheless, it was a nice step forward, from a 40 to a 56. So I just think there's, more potential for this horse to keep getting better. And I think, a lot of these that came out of that race on, I think it was July 7th, when I watched that replay, none of them really impressed me. So I just think this is the one with the most potential to take a step forward. And I don't know if you'll get 9-2, but I think if there's any way you can get in a price in a race that this is wide open, this is definitely the race to try to beat the favorite. That being said, I think Noah made some valid points, and I do think the 1 is obviously the safest bet here. Obviously, with them both being the same trainer, you got to pay attention to that as well in terms of strategy-wise, what approach might be taken. And then I just threw the 6 in third, again, just looking for a fresh face, because when I watched the replay of that race that I believe the 4, 5, and 7 were in, I wasn't impressed in that replay at all, so I'd rather look elsewhere.
Obviously I have the 6 on top, so I completely agree with you. Wasn't exactly thrilled with that race, but either way, I just thought I showed the time for him, guys. This race it's basically going to be a jock's race. Whoever wants to get the lead is going to get the lead. And I feel like Maggie T could end up being that horse. Has been on the lead in some pretty quick fractions, on the lead at Aqueduct at 7, which is what this is at, for 46-3, and still only held on to just lose by half a length. Granted, again, as you guys see, lower claiming levels, but this is not a world beater N1X by any means. And I just think if this horse can get the lead by herself, I think Maggie T is going to have at least a tactical advantage over others. Might not be good enough, but those last 2 numbers are definitely good enough to win a race like this. So Maggie T will end up being my pick on top for a straight pace play, for hopefully one that might float under the radar with lower level connections than some of these others. The only other horse we really have to talk about, guys, is I have the number 5, Foxy Cara, and I'll touch on Carol T as well, just to touch so we can get through all of the lower priced horses in this race. Foxy Cara is a horse for Mitchell Friedman, who doesn't run, who's a smaller barn. Eric Cancel picks up the mount. This is a horse that likes to close, likes to sit farther back, and I just wasn't sure what the pace angle was going to be for Foxy Cara, though I think she's run very good races. I mean, she's ran in the money. She's ran second and third 12 out of 19 times, so she always gives her best run. While it's never usually a winning one, as she's 1 for 19, but she definitely is at least warranted a look underneath if you're playing this race vertically. And Carol T is a horse that all of us chose to go against in this race for Ramon Vasquez and Jose Jimenez. That last race I thought was a pretty good run, but that was against Big Hazel, who in this race is the 4 at 8-1 for David Dunk. Came back a week ago and ran like absolute crap, didn't run a whole step at all. So I'm just not too sure what Carol T is, and her best running have been behind a quick pace, as you guys see in that main special weight in the middle of the screen. So wasn't too sure what to do with Carol T. Plus, the pace doesn't look like it's going to set up for her, so I wasn't too keen on including her anywhere. I'm sure that's what all the guys thought about when they chose to go against her as well. But we'll keep moving on. These next two races are very, very good. I'm going 6-1-5. Pat's going 3-1-6. Charlie's going 3-1-6 as well. Noah's going 1-3-6. Guys, we'll move on to race number 8. This is the Saratoga Oaks Invitational, a grade 2, going 1 mile and 3/16 on the turf. And a lot of people have brought up the W word in the chat. They brought up the weather. However, today, absolutely monsoon. However, the next 2 days look to be bright and at least bright and dry, if not sunny. So hopefully it should dry out by Friday. Saturday does look a little bit sketchy with scattered thunderstorms likely. So 50% chance of rain, I believe I saw on Weather Channel earlier. So that's one thing to keep in mind as well. But it looks like we are good for Friday. As I mentioned before, the Saratoga Oaks Invitational, mile and 3/16. The morning line favorite is a very, very good one. The number 1, Cinderella's Dream for Buick, coming over to run for Appleby. Second choice is actually not the other Euro. It's the number 6, Segesta for Irad and Chad Brown, coming off a really good run last time against Cinderella's Dream. And third choice is shared between the number 4, Makanga for Johnny V and Dutrow, and the number 5, Greenfinch for Ryan Moore and Aiden O'Brien, who are bringing Greenfinch over and are bringing horses in tomorrow that the Howard, Pete, and Paul will talk about for Saturday. But guys, seven horses, and you get 2 of the top trainers in Europe bringing over. Obviously, Cinderella's Dream ran last time in the States, but either way, this is actually a pretty good field of 7. You'll see 3 of us are going within Cinderella's Dream. But Noah, my friend, you did go first last race, but you got some explaining to do, my friend. You are up first. Look, she can definitely win, and I'll show obviously the pace scenario as well, which I'm sure is something you keyed in on with the number 6, Segesta.
Yeah, I think this is one of the better 3-year-old filly turf divisions that I've seen in the time that I've covered horse racing. I mean, we've got some major players in here, and I think Segesta is one of them. She won the Wonder again 2 back, and then last time in the Belmont Oaks, she got the lead, and she didn't really go all that fast, but in the stretch, I mean, she fought off the 2-year-old champ, and She Feels Pretty, and She Feels Pretty is a pretty damn good horse. And I thought she just kind of did the dirty work in that race. I know Cinderella's Dream kind of came from way out of it and came with a really nice kick, but I don't know if the smaller field necessarily helps her. I just don't, for some reason, I just don't see her coming from that far back in such a small field. And I think Segesta, because Makanga's probably going to go out for the lead, I think Segesta goes back to having the target. So I think she's just going to sit off, as they say in the time form, with the perfect trip. And I'm going to take my chances with her and see if she can get the first jump on the Euros.
Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, it makes a whole ton of sense from that perspective again as well. Greenfinch isn't slow, but obviously we talk about a lot on the show, especially around Breeders' Cup time, the difference between American slow or American fast and Euro fast. She's been prominent in every single race she's ran in Ireland, except for the 2 back at Naas, where she actually ran back on 2 weeks rest, which is the one thing I'll point out in a little bit with this horse. But look, she makes a ton of sense. The number one, Cinderella's Dream. Patrick, I'll throw it to you first, and then Charlie, feel free to chime in on anything she doesn't. The one thing that I didn't like about Segesta here was that if Cinderella's Dream caught her last time, I mean, if I don't like Noah said, though, I think that's a good point that Makanga is probably going to go to the lead, which means that Segesta might get a better trip than last time, more of what she wants to do rather. But that was a very, very impressive effort last time from Cinderella's Dream of the Belmont Oaks.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, Charlie Appleby said it in an interview I saw the other day. I mean, he said, she's just in great form right now off that last run. She broke the track record at Aqueduct in the Belmont Oaks, actually, which was just ultra impressive. And I do get what Noah's saying about the smaller field. I would take that as a little bit of a concern because, you don't know what the pace is to run into. And I'm not going to go to Makanga just yet because I do have some things to say about her. But Cinderella's Dream, that turn of foot was just ultra impressive. And didn't really have a lane at the top of the stretch. And, got Buick to bounce her to the outside a little bit when that lane kind of after it opened, right before it closed, I should say. And I mean, she just seems like she's in a groove.
Yeah, and you'll see she's the 8 running on the outside here. Segesta is the 6. She feels pretty, as Noah touched on, is the 7, the 2-year-old champion. And look at such a she's flying down the stretch into not a whole lot of pace, might I add, as well as we all see with with Aqueduct being, walk the dog mode a lot of the time. She flew down that stretch, man.
She sure did. I don't know if you guys have anything else to say about Cinderella's Dream, but I'll just touch on the 4 Makanga for a minute. Listen, this horse last out ran huge. Had to deal with the other Chad, and I believe it was Chantilly Road, who kind of set the pace at longer odds for oversubscribed. And Makanga, went on with it as far as she could and then kind of just, got tired, shortened strides, and lost it. If they don't go with her, Johnny V could take them all the way because she's impressive.
Yeah, I mean, she's only dealt with the only time she's not dealt with red numbers in there is that time that she won at Gulfstream. Granted, in a colder pace that time, but the point I think it's still there, at least for Makanga to be in the money. Let alone, winning the whole race. Charlie, anything more you want to touch on with Cinderella's Dream, and then we can touch on the 5 for Aidan O'Brien.
Yeah, no, I think the 1 is clearly the horse to beat. I think you guys kind of nailed everything about it. But I thought, again, as Patrick said, I thought, obviously you guys know I love my closers, but for me, it wasn't just the wicked turn of foot. It was like what Pat keyed in on that you see in the replay. It wasn't like she, saved a bunch of ground or just got clean air and then rolled on by. She had to wait for a gap to open up that wasn't that big, and it was a great ride, might I add. But then eventually, once got out there, was kind of a little green once she got in clean air, and then eventually really locked in and clocked in. And then even at the very end was a little bit in hand, as you kind of saw across the wire. So I just think that, there should be more pace, obviously, with the 4 in this race. I think Noah's claims and concerns are valid, and I don't think this horse is completely unbeatable, but I also think that 6 to 5, as short as it seems in a field this talented, is kind of realistic. I will say, I think the 6 to me is the big threat. I think Noah nailed that, and that, if someone were to kind of get the jump on the 1, it would be the 6. But I think the ultimate wild card in this race is the 5, who, as you touched on, is who I have in 3rd. I know you have in 2nd. Has been prominent in a lot of races, but obviously the question is going to be, how does the Euro translate first time in America?
Yeah, and then this thing I wanted to touch on was Howard points out, be prepared to upgrade horses who want give in the ground. Like I said, they had a monsoon there earlier, which I think only upgrades both Cinderella's Dream and the number 5 Greenfinch. As I pointed out, I watched every race but that Nas race, as that was the one that wasn't available to me. For those that don't know, NYRA Bets is fantastic. Again, not sponsored at all, but they have a full database of all these replays. Fantastic especially for like Breeders' Cup when you're launching these Ireland races and stuff. She's been very prominent in a lot of her races, either just sitting off or making the lead in a lot of them, including that last race at Killarney where she did end up making the lead. And even on the lead, her turn of foot was great. I mean, she bolted away at the top of the stretch by like 4 lengths and ended up winning, not geared down, but, not being fully asked at the end either by Wayne Lorden. I just thought that was a fantastic effort from her. And the one thing that does concern me a little bit is this horse ran 2 weeks ago. This horse ran July 17th. Will be 2.5 weeks ago, of course, by the time this race goes off. But you know, that's a tough trip from going all the way from Ireland to here and run on 2 weeks rest. I will point out though, she did run on 12 days rest before, from that Group 3 at the Darley Munster Oaks into that Noss Oaks trial, only lost by 3/4 out there. So she has run very well off of that rest, that type of rest before. But that's, you know, the ship is also the question to keep in mind. But if they get the give in the ground like it looks like they should, and Greenfitch is going to be a little more prominent to get a jump on a horse like Cinderella's Dream, Greenfitch could be very dangerous. And Aidan O'Brien brings over Ryan Moore for this as well as tomorrow. So, you know, those, and obviously Appleby brings over Buick too. So, you know, they're not playing around with this. They come over here to win these races. But again, even though it's a short field of 7 guys, a fantastic field of 7, including 2 really good European runners. I'm going 156. Pat's going 146. Charlie's going 165. Noah's going 615. Guys, we'll keep moving here. And this is the co-feature on the card. The race that if you've been a fan of Bettin N Boozin for a long time, it's a race we covered 3 separate times on this podcast last year because it continued to get canceled every single weekend. And we're like, oh, I guess we're covering Saratoga this week. And guess what race is there? It's the Grade 2 Hall of Fame. Got to bring that up every time you see this name at this point. But Grade 2 going a mile on the inner turf course, $500,000 on the line for 3-year-olds only. And I'll show the Equibase right now. The morning line favorite is a really nice runner for Rob Atras. The number 4, Neat Alvarado, picks up the mount, 5-2 on the morning line. The number 8, Army Officer, is your second choice. Frankie Dettori picks up the ride for Brad Cox at 7-2. Third choice, number 3, Zverev for Jose Ortiz and Cherie DeVoe at 4-1. Guys, switching over to our picks right now. And I'll tell you what, guys, I thought this is my play of the day, by the way. I thought I was being sneaky going against a lot of these horses. And then what I should know that there's a lot of very astute people on this podcast, and I got absolutely shelled as 3 people are going with me and the Cherie DeVoe fan club, the number 3, Zverev. Charlie, you are going with a horse that you've had a lot of history with. For those that remember on Derby, this is Charlie's main talking point for a long time. But and obviously did run very well in the American turf at a pretty large price of 36-1. But Charlie, back to the old well, my friend. What'd you like most about this race in Laganos?
You know, with Laganos, what I like is if you look at some of these other horses that are lower prices, is what you do have to give him credit for, whether you like it or not, is he always runs his race and it's always a decent effort. I understand that he hasn't quite gotten over the hump. I'm not going to try to act like that's not the case, but I also know this is a horse that started out on dirt, has continued to have more efforts on turf now and is growing. I understand, you know, it's not maybe what someone who is on the Laganos bandwagon would want. Obviously, rather than seeing steady progression at this slow of a rate, I would have liked to see maybe a 90 by now or something to really jump off the cage. But when I was looking at some of these others, these numbers truly do fit. I mean, you look at the favorite Neat, who obviously is a very talented horse who beat Deterministic that I have in the mix there. And, you know, Laganos beat up on Neat pretty well in comparison to the American turf. And, you know, 9-2 versus 5-2, and Neat will likely be the favorite. You're going to get every bit of 92 on Laganos, if not more. And this is one that I understand he's a bit of a deeper closer and that a lot has had to go right. But I'm still seeing that progression visually to me personally more than what the numbers are indicating. And I also like that last time out, he was closer up than he has been in the past, because I think that's been his biggest issue, was just having too much ground to make up and not being close enough. I understand they're showing he'll be pretty far back, but I think even if the jockey can just be a little more aggressive and get him closer to where you see that 1 in that pace projection, I really do think Laganos could surprise you and finally get over the hump here. And I'm going to stick with them. I'll let you guys talk on the 3. I know I have the horse second, so I'll just briefly touch on Neat and let you guys take the show with the 3. With Neat, the horse hasn't put a step wrong, really. I understand, obviously, the effort in the American turf was not good, but, you know, we've talked about this. Some horses just really don't respond well to that good turf. I know the horse had a good effort and Keeneland on the good turf, but I think that good turf on Churchill was just completely different. There were so many horses that just did not run well in that race that came back to run far better. And I just like the versatility. Another one that has shown some efforts closer up, some efforts a little bit further back. And I think as long as in what should be a moderate pace, this horse can sit pretty close. I think he certainly could be the one to beat. I just don't like the 5-2 price. There's a horse that for me is more of an underway.
I don't disagree with you by any means on that. Noah, I'll let you talk first. Anything, we'll touch on Neat in a second, but Zverev, like I said, I have very strong opinions on this horse. But last time out in that N1X at Churchill, that was a very good race for this horse, going away from a horse named West Hollywood, who Paul and I talked to at great length about on last Thursday's podcast, and ended up going off as the favorite, which I didn't see, but still a nice healthy price of 3-1. And, looks to improve off that last effort. And Cherie DeVaux's been great.
Yeah, you're definitely right about that. The runners that Cherie has brought have run very well so far. The last race was the Beyer top in a very good race. And like you said, beat that horse West Hollywood, who haunted the dreams of Pat and I for about 3 seconds. But nonetheless, I think just due to the fact that the three of us like him, and I think others will be on him, I think he probably will get bet quite a bit. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he's the favorite in here. And I honestly would tread lightly just because, he did run that good race last time, but it was a perfect trip. And, if you take that race out of his past performances, there's not really a race on there that gets it done. So you could make the case that he is just improving, but if you're looking for a reason to play against, I would be just a little skeptical in that regard, and I would probably demand a decent price because this is a group of horses that are very talented, and I think there's quite a few in here that can win.
Yeah, I mean, Patrick, I agree with him completely. The problem is that I just see Zverev getting that exact same trip as he got last time in this race, right. Which, again, like I said, Noah's point is completely valid. And even like he said about getting rid of that last race, it can make a case for, I would not want this horse as the favorite at like 5-2 or even lower than I wouldn't want this horse at all. I think Neat will end up being the favorite. I mean, he hasn't done anything. The only blemish on this horse's card is that American turf. Otherwise, he's 3 for 3 this year minus that American turf with, steadily little improving buyers. So I think Neat will probably still end up being the favorite. But if Zverev's like second choice, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if Neat wasn't the favorite, like you said. Yes, I mean, no one makes good points about, the buyers and stuff like that. But Zverev has been a little bit immature, early on, and you can kind of see it. It gets the blinkers and then kind of just seems to hit its stride. And I mean, if this horse can just rebound with that trip, like you said, Kyle, after facing West Hollywood, honestly, even if the price goes down a little bit, I'm willing to take the risk there. I really think with the way Cherie DeVaux has been up at Saratoga and the horses she's been running, how good they have, I think this horse is well meant in this spot.
I mean, look, brother, you don't have to explain to me. Like I said, I always joke, I'm top step of the Cherie DeVaux fan club. You don't have to explain that one for me, at least. I think she's fantastic. And like you said, she's been bringing great runners up there all meet long, winning almost at 30%, is in the trainer standings, running, a fifth of a lot of runners that, for a quarter of the runners that like someone like Chad has. So definitely, of course, worth a look. And at 7-2, 4-1 is definitely one of my biggest plays of the day. Last horse we'll talk about, and then we'll move on, is number 8, Army Officer, Brad Cox for Frankie Dettori. Has had the only reason why I think a lot of us don't have this horse in there or have this horse in third or second is that, this is a horse that has needed a pace setup the last 2 times. I'm not so sure that he's going to get it in here. However, those last 2 turf races are very, very good. Again, maybe not against the best fields, but this race though, Hunt Ball, Time Song, again, 80, 80, 87, 81, 73, a lot of these horses have come back to run very well, even though not winning, and have kept, that form. So I think if Army Officer gets a little overlooked in this race, I think he's easily a shot for second or third in this race, but might even be shot on the win end if that pace does end up developing more than what time form and what we see on paper. As we all know, a tendency of that has happened at Saratoga more often than we, of course, like to say. But Army Officer is definitely one underneath that I'd be playing with for sure. But on the win end, like I said, might need a pace setup as he's had, but has one, a little bit closer to the pace as well. So Army Officer definitely shouldn't be one that you just throw out there, just because we don't have the horse anywhere on the top end. I'm going 3-8-4. Patrick's going 3-8-4. Charlie's going 5-3-4. Noah's going 3-4-8, guys. And going into the last race here, and this last race is tough. It's a main special weight, 90,000, 6 furlongs for fillies and mares 3 years old and up, foaled in the state of New York. New York bred to close out the card, field of 9, and I'll show the Equibase right now with a pretty heavy favorite in the number 9. Geopolitics. Joel Rosario takes the mount for Bill Mott at 7-5. Then the second choice is on the rail, the number 1 Evaluation. IRAD for Chad at 4-1, and Grenadilla, your third choice, for Jose Ortiz and Dutro at 5-1. And I'll bring up the picks right now for the last race here. Two of us, Patrick and I, are going with number 1 Evaluation. Charlie's going with the number 9 Geopolitics. And Noah's going a little bit off the beaten path with the number 2, Blue Suede Sue. I had to say that super slow, otherwise it just sounds Blue Suede Sue. That's how it sounds. Charlie, I'll let you go first since you're talking about the morning line favorite. What did you think I wasn't going to say?
How many times did you practice that one?
Yeah, I just said it and I saw it and I said it in my head, just say it slow, you'll get it right. Just say it slow, you'll get it right. Because otherwise, like I said, it would sound like that. Geopolitics, Charlie, of course, makes a ton of sense, but this is a horse that we talk about all the time that just does not seem to like getting her picture taken, and has shown it through the first 4 seconds through the first 4, but obviously based on numbers and, maybe even trip can definitely win this race.
Yeah, I mean, look, I just think that, obviously these firsters are question marks. For me personally, it's always a concern when a firster's on the rail, and the only first timer that truly stuck out to me as a win play was the one that you guys have. So for me, that was just one more concern. I also just think it's good for a speed horse in a field that's a reasonable size to just be on the outside. Don't worry about getting, crushed on the inside or any chaos with those, firsters who can act up a little bit. Just have this one on the outside. Get Joel to have this one in clean air. Just try to avoid being too wide. Just angle over, get up on the lead, and then just kind of wire this field. And that's what I anticipate Geopolitics to do. Now, I will say, while I, kind of expect that to happen here, and I think this one is the horse to realistically beat, I also don't really love a horse that can't seem to win at 7-5. Is not one I'd play on my own. This is one realistically you probably have to use defensively in the sequence, but I do think there's some other horses to look around at. I'll let you guys talk more about the 1, but I was surprised, Kyle, to see you have the 8. I'll just touch on that real quick because I thought I'd be the only one to have this horse. This one's super interesting to me, and if I did play this race, I'd obviously have to see how the board turns out. But if I played this race on its own, I think the 8 would be the horse I'd take a chance at. Because if you're giving me 12-1 on a horse that's working forwardly, that seems to be, for this field standards, decently well meant, that's Maker and Gaffleone, I'm taking that any day of the week.
Well, and I'll tell you what, to even further your point, I'll talk about the 8, of course, then we'll move into the 1. Tulip Mania is a horse out of Empire Maker, and maybe a horse you guys have heard of. Gambling Girl. Does that name ring a tone by any means? Second place in the Kentucky Oaks behind Pretty Mischievous. Third place in the CCA Oaks behind Wet Paint and Sacred Wish. Just a fantastic runner, running on the Kentucky Oaks Trail for a long time for Todd Pletcher. So if this horse, obviously out of a horse by Gambling Girl, should be pretty well meant, is working forwardly, as Charlie said, for Maker at a double-digit price in a maiden race, where a lot of these horses that have run before, either one, don't like to get their picture taken, like the number 9, or just haven't really done anything for me to warrant me playing them. I think the 8 is definitely one to take a chance on, at least underneath. So Charlie, I completely agree with you. Patrick, we both have number 1 Evaluation. Everyone has this horse in there, somewhere in their top 3 by the late Flatter, working very forwardly. This is a horse that Chad had at Monmouth for a while, but definitely one that's working pretty well and looks to have at least in the mix.
Yeah, for sure. And, has been working, at Monmouth and kind of Chad, in the summertime, especially when horses aren't ready yet at 2 and gets to their 3-year-old age, you kind of wonder how good they are and stuff like that. But this horse has been working very well.
Yeah.
And I expect, especially from the rail with IRAD, if this horse can show some early speed, in a spot with a lot of, obviously trying to break their maidens, just get to the front here and go on with it, because the 9 geopolitics has stuffed so many people in a locker in the past. It's gotten pretty rough.
Yeah.
And other than that, I mean, you kind of look around for, prices and stuff like that, like the 4 My Magic Wand for Greg Sacco. This horse, purchased for 155,000. Not to, I usually don't see Gregory Sacco training horses that that well meant, especially working that well. So I think,
sure,
I think this horse could be something here. Is not very good first time out, but I'm willing to take a chance, especially if the price is going to be there.
I don't disagree with you. In evaluation, one thing I'll add is this horse has a lot, not so much on the dirt, but is 1 for 5 at dirt sprinting. This horse is 2 really nice horses on the progeny side. Gotta Go Mo, who was a very nice turf sprinter for John Kimmel, somewhere in that mid 80s range, while being, second place in a listed stake behind the great Caravel, just losing by a nose to that one, and making my move for John Kimmel as well. Another half sister to that one, and then running those low 80s in that turf sprinting division, winning again, listed stake winning, black type and all that, ran 3rd in the grade 3 matron at Belmont. So, birthing runners for sure. Maybe not dirt is what this horse wants, but Flatter has definitely done better with his dirt runners than his turf runners. You can see dirt sprinting winning at 17% for his career, while turf 8 and 9% sprinting and routing respectively, of course. Sorry. So I think evaluation makes a ton of sense on the dirt, and one working forwardly from the inside, whether he goes to the lead with geopolitics or just stalks right off the pace, I think makes a ton of sense in this race. Last one we'll talk about, Noah, is your top pick, Blue Suede Sioux, who is a horse for Danny Gargan, who unfortunately hasn't had the best start to his Saratoga meet, but this one's working forwardly as well for a son of Nyquist, or a daughter of Nyquist, who's had a very good start to his stallion career.
Yeah, I'm taking a bit of a flyer with Blue Suede Sioux. Like you said, Danny Gargan is not really a first-time guy, but if you kind of look through the weeds, he's actually debuting this horse at 4, and I, of course, had to bring a stat for you guys because I didn't bring one all show or the last 2 weeks. Danny Gargan's actually 2 for 4 when debuting with 4-year-olds or older, which is not a huge sample size, but it is kind of interesting that he's done well when he debuts for horses that, maybe are a little bit older than the rest in the field. And then going to the breeding, you obviously said Nyquist, who's very capable of winning first out. And then the Dam Bluegrass Flag was a very fast sprinter and was very good early in her career, and won the New York Stallion race by 6 lengths with a 90 buyer on the lead. So, I expect this horse to be probably pretty fast out of the gate. Saez will make sure that she is.
Yeah.
And I know she's probably not going to outbreak the 3 or the 9, but if she is capable and hopefully being 4 mature enough to kind of sit off those 2, that's really, my only hope. I'm just trying to look for someone to try and beat the 9 because it's really hard to trust the 9 and put the 9 on top. So I thought the 2 was one that, maybe you could look at.
I don't disagree with you by any means. And yes, that is Noah's favorite jockey, as Howard points out in the chat. I'm going 198. Pat's going 194. Charlie's going 918, and Noah's going 291. Guys, thank you guys all so much. Obviously, of course, we have best bets coming up, but just wanted to remind you guys, if you haven't already here on YouTube, please go down below the video player. Please hit the like button and please hit the subscribe button. It helps us out a lot. It's completely free to do. And not only does it show us that you guys are enjoying the content, but it also pushes these videos out into the YouTube algorithm to hopefully bring like-minded horse players like yourself over to the HHH Racing Podcast. So for that, of course, we thank you. And of course, be sure to tune in tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern for the Whitney Day stakes coverage or stakes preview and the late pick 5 preview at Saratoga. So, guys, let's get into best bets here. Patrick, I have you up first. You already mentioned a little bit about the trifecta key, the number 2, Jersh, in the 6th race. And race number 8, which is the Saratoga Oaks, you're doing Dutch exactas 1-4 and 4-1. That's Cinderella's Dream and Makanga.
Yeah, so Jahersh in the 6. Listen, that race is wide open. I firmly believe it. If I can just key that horse in 2nd and 3rd and maybe play a little win place, I'm expecting a good payout there, especially if the horse can somehow win. And kind of going with that try key that seems to be newer for me. I started to play that more often. Maybe because the boss likes to embed that in our brains now. But
that was trademarked.
Yeah,
you can't
exactly.
You got to use a different wording than trifecta key.
Yeah, exactly. And then going to Dutch some exactas. Makanga, I don't want to say scares me because I do like her a lot, but she really could wire this field, and I'm just going to try and get hope Cinderella's Dream is really just that good and try and nail the exacta there. If not, have a safety blanket with Makanga winning that race, and hopefully Cinderella's Dream is flying late. So those are going to be my 2 best bets on what I like to call the appetizer of Whitney Day.
Yeah, the appetizer. And it's a very, very good, it's like cheese curds up here in Wisconsin. It's a very, very good appetizer. Charlie, up to you next. You're going to exacta in race number 8, the same race as well, but going a different way. Keying the number 1, Cinderella's Dream on top with the number 5, Greenfinch, and 6, Segesto, 2 other logicals in 2nd and 3rd. And following the dream, my friend, race 9 to win on the number 5 Laganos. With Noah cracking up a freaking storm.
Look, obviously, considering that he feels good about going with the horse that everyone else has on top, which now means the 3 won't fire, is crazy, but we'll wait to address that later. Look, the 1 is the most likely winner on the card besides Laganos. No, but on a serious note, the 1 is obviously the most likely winner. So in case the Euro ends up being a freak, I still, I've talked about this a lot. I tend to like to wait a race when I'm using a Euro and see how they do, but you got to respect the connections. And then the 6, who I know Noah likes a lot, I think could sit that dream trip. And who knows? I mean, the 4 could cause chaos. I think Pat made a lot of strong points, but you guys know me. I don't like speed horses, especially not in longer races. So I'm going to trust that the 1 rolls on home and shows that freakish kick that Pat talked a lot about, and that one of the likely other 2, chalks finishes underneath. And then I'm going with Laganos. I'm taking my chance. I know Neat's a solid horse, but I'm going to play against that favorite. And I hear what you guys said about the 3. I have the horse in 2nd. I think it's an ultra-talented horse. I also think it's a horse that has only had a few big numbers and has kind of needed a dream trip. And I'm just going to kind of hope that these horses like the 3 and 8, who have really relied on perfect trips to have good efforts, kind of have their luck expire, and the 4 kind of drops another dud like, we've seen has kind of been a little up and down. Obviously, it's had some nice wins, but against weaker fields. And that Laganos, maybe instead of having these little steady jumps, finally takes that big leap here and cashes in at 9-2. And if I get anywhere 4-1 or higher, I will be laughing to the bank.
You sure hope so. Although a lot of us would hope not. But of course, Charlie, good luck with your best bets as well. Noah, to you, my friend, 2 win bets on the card for you. Race number 6 to win on number 5, the 3-1 morning line favorite, Unleash the Power. And in race number 8, you talked about it. That's supposed to be a number 6, but you're hoping that Segesta gets the better of him in race number 8 in the Saratoga Oaks.
Yeah, the 5 in race 6, kind of like I said, is normally a horse that I wouldn't like, but it's just kind of a pace and a class angle. I think he's just been facing the best horses, and I think he's going to sit a really great chip just because there's not a lot of speed in the race. And then fast forward to race 8, I see Patrick's Makanga getting the lead, but I think Segesta's probably going to be right on top of her at the top of the stretch and get that first jump and, try and play catch me if you can with those Euros. I know our good friend Pete Visco would appreciate that. So I'm just going to go with 2 win bets, and that's what I got for you on Friday.
No, I mean, look, trust me, in the race like that, if you can get Segesta home, not only does it warrant a good price, it's going to, break open a pick 5 where a lot of people are going to be singled to the number 1 Cinderella's Dream. So obviously good luck with Segesta there. I'm taking 2 other races. I talked about Emirates Road a lot, guys, on the 6-1. Might be a little bit foolish taking a horse that wide in a mile field at Saratoga, but off the claim for Brad Cox, who doesn't do it very often. When he does it, he spots his horses very, very well off the claim. I just think Emirates Road creates a ton of inherent value. I wouldn't take anything lower than 5-1 on this horse. If the Brad Cox money comes in, then I wouldn't be willing to touch this horse on top, at least with a vertical win bet. But anything over that, I think it warrants enough value with good percentages off the claim as my mic attacks me in the face. And although talking about value, I thought Zverev was going to be a little bit of an undercard play, but apparently not, considering we have very astute guys on the screen right now. Two of them went with me on Zverev. I just, like I talked about, it's just my strongest opinion on the day. Think she sits another perfect trip, and if he gets that type of trip, he's going to be very tough to beat against with a horse who's who's improving and getting very, very good at the correct time. So that will be, of course, concluding the Saratoga portion of this show. But do not go anywhere, guys, as the man that's sitting in the background that's joined me on the last couple weeks, of course, a great friend of the podcast and director of racing at Hawthorne Race Course. Going to bring him on right now, Jim Miller. Jim, my friend, what's going on?
I can tell you I'm aging myself a little bit when I see you guys talking about a horse named Jay Hirsch. Okay. And I worked with Joe Hirsch, and Joe passed away in 2009. So I've been around racing for quite some time, but he was a very good turf rider, and it was very cool. I worked a lot of Arlington Millions with him actually in the past. So shows I've been around a little bit, but yeah, glad to join you guys tonight.
I do obviously being an Arlington guy, I do recognize the name Joe Hirsch, but I didn't think it was going to be Jay Hirsch, but I guess that's my own problem for not, I blame DRF not being able to watch Churchill races. But that's a story for a different day. But gentlemen, of course, I will let you guys go. Jim and I will talk tomorrow at Hawthorne. We're going to be talking about 3 races coming up at Hawthorne, but thank you guys all for joining the show. Charlie, Patrick, Noah, I appreciate it, guys, a lot. And we'll talk to you soon.
See you guys.
Take it easy, guys.
Appreciate it, boys. All right, Jim, let's get her going here. Another good card. Obviously, last week, a very good card, which saw some favorites getting beat, which was obviously a very good sight to see for a lot of bettors. Hopefully you had them when they came through. One-timer in one of those turf stakes, of course, comes to mind. But, yeah, another good weekend to look forward to here after a good weekend last weekend.
Well, and the thing that was really interesting last weekend was 2 things. One, we got very lucky with weather. We're able to stay on the turf for a couple of races later in the card last Thursday. And then Sunday, I was really kind of surprised when I walked the turf in the morning, and it was holding up very well. We had storms hit about race 3, but again, the turf was able to handle some water. We kept all 4 races on the grass on Sunday. And like you mentioned, some upsets. And what was really interesting, in the Lady Carey, you had Daring Do from the barn of Wesley Ward, who supplemented for the race. So there was intent right there going into the race. Comes in, runs, and then wins at 9-1. And it was a very good ride by Walter Rodriguez and getting the job done there in the Lady Carey. And then, like you mentioned, one-timer coming in off the lengthy layoff. And the horse was very, very game. Got pushed every step of the way, but Mischievous Rogue, just a dream trip for Mike Maker. Came rolling at him late and ran on by. But 2 good races. Good to see these races in the inaugural runnings of them, get horses from coast to coast, and something that I'm excited about moving forward.
No, absolutely. And then that's the one thing I was going to point out was how often you get a Wesley Ward horse at 9-1.
Right. Especially in a sprint. It's a turf sprint for sure.
That's exactly what I'm saying. And again, congratulations to anyone who cashed on her. And then obviously one-timer, again, ran super well, as you touched on. Mischievous Rogue just absolutely tripped out in that race. But granted, did it very well. But yeah, got the least part of that really hot pace.
Right. I see Jim Pilars's note there asking about no balls. And it was one of those where Larry just wanted to separate the 2 horses. Both of them were coming off very lengthy layoffs. No balls was a horse that he wanted to get a start in the race at Saratoga, popped up there. One-timer at Hawthorne. He just didn't want to run the 2 horses against one another. They're both going to be so much better in that next start out, because he knew if No Balls was ready, he probably would be running in a stake this weekend. So it's one of those that just got each of them starts coming in off about 10 months layoffs. And I expect to see a lot out of each of those horses moving forward now.
I'm sure. And I'm sure one-timer, once Kentucky Down starts rolling up, I'm sure you'll see that
That's
horse
exactly
come around to that as well. 2 people I want to point out in the chat, Jim, then we'll move on. Mark Flanagan said, love the show, guys. Thanks for doing this. And David, great show, guys. I don't think I've seen either of them in the chat for Bettin N Boozin. So thank you guys all so much for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. Jim, as I touched on, we're going to talk about races 4, 5, and 8, if I remember correctly, what we talked about. 3 races that are off the turf with, shocker, a little bit shaky weather coming into the Chicago area again.
Yeah, and the thing was, hopefully we stay on the turf, but you don't know. It's supposed to be scattered showers all day tomorrow. The turf crew is out there today. They rolled the entire course. It's flat as a pancake. It's firm as can be right now. It's just a matter of what happens for the rain tomorrow. So I wanted to stay away from those races a little bit. But I'll tell you, it's not like for this card, for a Thursday card, we're picking out 5,000 claimers or maiden 6250s. We got maiden 2-year-olds and 2 optional 50s. So really good fields here that we put late in the card. So it is. It's a nice sequence, especially for that late pick 5 on Thursday.
No, absolutely. And we talked about the aforementioned races. This first one we're talking about, Jim, I went to race 5, excuse me, but race 4 is that maiden special weight going 5 furlongs, 32,000 with a couple of Illinois breds, which of course we love to see. I'm showing the Equibase right now. Morning favorite is one of those Illinois breds for, of course, a very familiar site of Jareth Loveberry, Larry Ravelli, 5-2 that you laid. Second choice is the number 5, Bella Vittoria at 7-2 for the other power duo of Chris Amy and Brittany Vandenberg, and 4-1 Julio Felix picking up the other Larry Ravelli in this race. Jim, as you see on the bottom of the screen, you see Jim's picks scrolling. You have the number 5, Bella Vittoria, going against the horse you laid on the morning line, going against both Ravellis in this race, but of course have them somewhere in the mix.
Well, and the thing is, Ravelli horses, especially for juvenile horses, are always going to take money each and every start out. We just know that's the case on the Illinois circuit. Look at the work pattern, though, for Bella Vittoria coming into this spot. Again, this is a Kentucky-bred horse coming into here, Brittany Vandenberg, and it's one of those where you see she doesn't start a whole lot of 2-year-olds. So she's usually one that has them a little bit later on in their career or gets them through the claiming game. They've had this one from the start, and the horse is working really well. But what I liked is Brittany brought the horse into school in the paddock last Sunday. The horse looked tremendous in the paddock, did everything well, handled everything just fine. I've gotten to see some of these works. And the thing that I really liked about the works was, especially those last 2, you see bullet drills, but they weren't bullets from the gate. These are just from the pole, and that's how quick this horse is. So if anybody's going to beat the Ravelli horse to the top in Little Poison, it's probably going to be Bella Vittoria, and I expect they'll be on the gas from the get-go. But I like this one's chances, and I think you're going to get that 7-2 as well.
I mean, you talked about it already, about how much these Larry Ravellis take money. Of course, a lot of the times for a good reason. You have 5-2 here. I wouldn't be surprised if both of them end up going off as 1-2 choice. Eliza Vance is the other one that you were against in this race, which is where I wanted to go next. And we'll talk about your other 2 that you have in there. What between the 4 and the 7, this one obviously has a race under her belt. Just what made you go with the 4 over the 7 in this one?
It's one of those, just knowing Larry Ravelli more than anything else. And the fact that he's mentioned time and again, hey, I trained for speed. I want them to get out of the gate. And this is a horse that just didn't do that in that debut start. And you see after that race, they've since come back with a couple of works there, and they've been pretty snappy drills, but it's an OBS purchase for $285,000 that you see on the screen. This is a horse that they were high on early on, sent off at 3-5 in that debut. But again, didn't get away the way that you would have expected. And now it's a rider change. David Cohen's going to ride the Catalano horse, the 3 horse in here. You get Julio Felix aboard this runner today, and Loveberry rides the other Ravelli. I just think the other Ravelli is the one they're a little bit higher on in this spot. And then the other one you may want to look at here is the 6. That's No Tip Tony. This one from the barn of trainer Joel Zawitz. This is a horse that did run well in that last out. That was all the way back on July 11th, and that was a race where the horse showed speed, battled every step of the way, was beaten only a half when all was said and done. But it was a pretty solid effort. And again, nobody's really going to look at Joel Zawitz when you have Ravelli and Catalano and Brittany Vandenberg. 5-1 may even be generous. You might get 6 to 8 to 1 in this spot too.
I don't disagree with you, even though that horse had very good, a very good last time out. And we talk about all the time in these baby races, obviously not only at Hawthorne but everywhere. A lot of times that experience is very, very, it's taken very, very well for a lot of these horses. And even though this horse has only lost by a half length on debut, you're probably going to get 4th choice, if not 5th choice in this race for a horse, like No Tip Tony.
Well, and you have that. I mean, like I said, you have Wayne Catalano's coming in with a horse that is interesting too, because the 3 little Lila Renee is a horse that is another one of those Illinois breds in here. The majority of the Catalano outfit is actually in Kentucky training. This is a horse that stayed at Hawthorne the whole time to get prepared for this debut. So you're familiar with the racetrack. You see, it's a long pattern of drills. The one thing, though, it's not real quick for the drills. So I tend to wonder if they're eventually setting this horse up to run a little bit longer. But we'll see. Again, just because of the connections alone, they're going to take some action in here.
I don't disagree with you. Actually, a homebred for Catalano, which is cool to see. His wife, Renee, on the right, his wife, correct?
Yep,
or is it,
yep, correct.
Yeah,
yep.
Okay, I gotta make sure and it's a Demarche Lier, which going short on the dirt might not be exactly what this horse wants to do. However, of course, Catalano, like you said, just the connections based, you're going to take a little bit of money there. So, but again, a fantastic 2-year-old race to start off. What we're talking about tonight.
It's a good race, and it's one of those where, again, I hope that the weather holds off a little bit. You don't want to have a sloppy track, especially for the babies for that first start out. The track does drain very well, but it's one of those where we put it just a little bit into the card so it becomes a part of the early pick 4, becomes a part of the pick 5, and that way you're going to get a few more eyes on this race a little bit later in the day. And with the quality of the field, we want to get a few more eyes on that field too for the 4th.
No, absolutely. And we'll move on to race number 5, Jim, which is what we talked about earlier. This is one of those 50 claimers, optional 50 claimers. And this is a really good race. Again, another, field of 7, but another pretty competitive field of 7 in this one. Morning line favorite you laid is that Larry Ravelli Loveberry combo, the number 3, Wilma Mankiller for 5 at 5-2, 7-2 for the number 5, First Hill. Cologne hops on for Hugo Rodriguez. Third choice being all the way to the outside, number 7, Beehive. In probably the B Silks, would be my guess for Michelle Boyce, as I always used to call them out there. And you see on the bottom of the screen right now, Jim, you are going with that aforementioned morning line favorite, Wilma Mankiller at 5-2.
Yeah, and looking at the race, I mean, a lot of these horses come out of that same race back on June the 29th, and that was a race that was really kind of an interesting one because Wilma Mankiller, that was the first start off the layoff there, and you see this is a horse that ran 3rd in that spot to a couple of others in the field. Hyper Sports back in there. First Hill ran a really good race in that spot too. But it's one of those where I tend to wonder if Wilma Mankiller just kind of needed that start. They went out there. Percy, another Michelle Boyce runner, was in that field, and Percy is very, very fast. Percy and Wilma Mankiller just kind of winged it up front early on. Pace complexion in this race is a whole lot different. Wilma Mankiller is probably the only speed in this spot. You're not going to have a Percy going out after you. Beehive, the other Boyce runner, is the horse that might get a good setup just sitting behind this horse too. Mm-hmm. That's a horse that's been in very good form. But I think off that last start, you're looking at the connections, a horse that loves this Hawthorne track too. I think things just set up for Wilma Mankiller in the second off the layoff.
And yeah, you talked about that, even though this is a Ravelli runner that loves to go to the front, you talked about the other speed in this race, or the lack thereof for that matter. Hypersport is a little bit fast, but probably not as fast as Wilma Mankiller, which is definitely something to keep in mind. You talked about Percy in that last race, who's very, very fast early, and Wilma Mankiller kept up with her. So it might just be a lot faster than a lot of these others, even though they have show speed in the past.
Well, the thing that's really interesting about a horse like Hypersport is the horse really likes to run close, but never run by. I mean, Hypersport's record at the distance is basically your telling sign there. 11 starts. 1 win, 7 runner-up efforts. It's a perfect horse to key underneath in the exacta. And you're probably going to get a similar price to what you got last out, 4 to 5 to 1 in here because of the presence of a horse like Beehive, because First Hill is back in the spot, and Wilma Mankiller will take a little bit more action. But First Hill ran a really solid race in that last out. You got claimed out of there, go to a new barn. Hugo Rodriguez, a very good trainer in here too. But it's nice to see these horses coming back after a light race, but just the pace complexion is so much different because of a horse that isn't in this race that was last out in Percy.
That's the beauty of this game, Jim. It's fantastic where you get 4 out of the 6 runners of the last race, and next thing you know, these races are completely different than the last time as well. And you have Hypersport in 3rd, who I actually like in this race as well. But yeah, just a matter, like you said, likes to get there and never likes to go past, end up winning. This is a horse that hasn't won since that early 2023 at Oaklawn Park, which actually passed horses that day. And it's probably the last time that the horse, again, at last time, of course, but against a very hot pace, as you talked about with Percy. So I completely agree with you on Hypersport. Definitely one to key underneath for Ingrid Mason, who her barn has unfortunately shortened a lot since when I started following Illinois racing. She used to be a pretty big catalyst in the Illinois racing scene. Fortunately, barn shortened, so 0 for 9, but 3 for 9 in the money as well. So definitely one, again, another angle to maybe key in underneath, at least for a horse like Hypersport.
Yeah, she's a very good horsewoman. She definitely knows what she's doing. She's had big strings of horses in the past. She's won a whole lot of big races.
Yes.
And it's one of those where she still spots the horse as well. And she likes this one because the horse is not in for the tag. They're running for the allowance. They want to protect the horse in here. So they still see something in Hypersport. It's just a matter of if that horse can run by that final horse in the lane.
Yep, no kidding. Absolutely. And of course, like I said, definitely a horse to have underneath if you don't have the horse on top. Jim, last race we'll talk about tonight is race number 8. And that, of course, is another aforementioned allowance optional 50,000 going 6 furlongs on the dirt with a lot of familiar faces, at least to me, Jim, in this spot. You get a lot coming back between Comiskey Park, Navy Seal, Twirling Roses, Richie's on a Roll. A lot of very mainstay horses, at least on the Illinois circuit, back in this race. And the morning line favorite in this race, you laid the number 8, Eli's Promise for Jimmy DeVito and Alexis Centeno at 3-1. Second choice, great name, Comiskey Park for Cologne, and Armando Hernandez. Third choice, Richie's on a Roll. And you're going with that aforementioned third choice in this race, the number 7, Richie's on a Roll.
Yeah, a couple of notes here. Comiskey Park actually ran in the sprint stake last weekend, but they haven't said they're coming out of this race just yet. So I'll be curious to see if Comiskey Park stays in. It's a very quick return. We've seen at this meet, though. We've seen horses that were running on Sunday and coming back and running the following Saturday. I don't know if the turf was really what they wanted, but it was something that they tried in that race and can't hurt. And you know what? It wasn't a terrible showing by any means. But Richie's on a Roll to me is kind of that sleeper in this spot a little bit. And this is a horse that has a good amount of ability. I mean, you look back through some of the past performances, you find some pretty solid races for Richie's on a Roll, but it's one of those where if nobody goes for the front, this is a horse that can take the lead. If somebody heads for the lead, this is a horse that can rate and run on late. The last out, I thought, was a really solid effort at the optional 50 in there. And just looking at this field, I mean, we know Eli's Promise can show speed on the outside, but you get Faithful Ruler from the 4-hole and Onasa from the rail, all that can go out there and wing it. And I think the pace is going to be very fast up front early on. I think Richie's on a Roll just kind of stalks and waits and pounces in the lane. I think you'll get a solid price.
Yeah, and Howard actually completely agrees with you from that regard, but he's actually interested in a completely different horse. He said number 3, Navy Seal, tons of early speed signed on, which is what you talked about. Obviously, number 1, Onasa, who is one of those aforementioned speed horses for Ravelli, 3 for 4 at Hawthorne, at least in the money. And makes a whole ton of sense. But yeah, just the pace narrow is that one question, I think, for this horse.
Yeah, and then one thing that changes that if we do get a little bit of rain, Onasa definitely moves up on a wet track. So that's something that you do want to make note of from the inside. But I don't think they have any choice but to go because you are going to have those horses in Faithful Ruler and Eli's Promise trying to cross over. So going to want to try to maintain that inside position. I think they'll rate up close. I don't know if it's going to be a battle or not, so we'll see. I know Howard mentioned Navy Seal. Navy Seal is a horse that likes the Hawthorne track quite a bit. Settles back early on as a one-run type of racehorse. He's just getting out of the gate for Navy Seal. And if the horse can do so, that is a horse that should come flying at him in the lane.
Yeah, and obviously that last race, won by Went West. Man, that's I tried, like I said, I went slow earlier, didn't go slow that time. I mean, this is a horse that makes a ton of sense. This is almost treated like they're kind of dropping this horse back, ran in Arkansas bred stakes races down at Oaklawn. First time since the end of the Oaklawn meet back here off the, a little bit of a layoff for Nancy Knott, who was another one of those runners that, maybe doesn't have the biggest barn contingency. But this one is, like, as Howard pointed out, one of those that might pick up the pieces late if that pace does melt down, as we pointed out.
Yeah, and you're going to get 8 to 10 to 1 on the horse, too, because, again, a lot of people don't know Nancy Knott. And when you're looking at Jimmy DeVito, you're looking at Larry Ravelli, you're looking at Armando Hernandez. There's some trainers in here that just based on name alone are going to take a whole lot of action. But here's the thing. Jareth Loveberry was in last week for the first time after coming back from Churchill. He won 4 races the first day he was back. He's riding Navy Seal. He probably had his option in numerous horses in here. So something to definitely look at there.
I don't disagree with you by any means. Eli's Promise is the last horse, Jim, I want to touch on a little bit. You mentioned obviously drawing the 8 post, but at that 6 furlong distance, it's got a pretty long he's got a pretty long run to the first turn, but all that speed signed on with a lot of these horses obviously is the question mark.
And the thing about it, he's committed to the front, and the comments were pretty much right on for that last out. It said cleared and out kicked for the comments. I mean, he cleared that pace pretty easily, cleared the lead in there. They were going fast, so up front. Battled into the lane. Went West is a solid racehorse that beat him in that race. But It just is. It's a whole different pace complexion in this spot. Again, 3 horses probably go out there and duel for the front end. I just think it's kind of a fall apart race and see who comes running at them the best late.
No, absolutely. And like I said, we talked about 3 really nice races. Even the turf races, Jim, you have the N1X in the last race going 7.5 on, routing on the turf. You have a 1 1/8, 10K claimer in there. There's a lot of good racing, as you mentioned, even for a Thursday where a lot of the time, like outside of Saratoga, you're itching for that type of racing. And I think Hawthorne can definitely provide it for a lot of people.
And that's the reason that we switched from Saturdays to Thursdays, just kind of knowing the fact that everybody has these stakes-packed cards on Saturdays. There's so much competition out there. Whereas you look for a Thursday, by the time we hit about that 4th race on the card, there's really not a whole lot of activity. You're going to have Saratoga, you'll have Horseshoe Indianapolis, and then people will be waiting for Woodbine to start a little bit later in the day. But it's a perfect spot for us to kind of jump in. Keep our fingers crossed we stay on the turf, because if we do, then it's a really nice late pick 5 sequence. And that's a sequence that's been picking up a lot of action. We've seen pools anywhere from 30 to 50,000 for it. So worth jumping into for that. The returns have been nice. All you need to do is beat a couple of favorites and you're in pretty good shape.
No, yeah, absolutely. And we talked about a lot of Hawthorne about the takeout, Jim.
Yep.
Obviously, a nationwide low win play show, but also pretty low in the pick 5 as well. So we talk about the better, the bettor's friendly track, as we like to say around here. But and we talk about you beat one of those 2 favorites with that low takeout can definitely make a difference.
Well, that's the thing about 12%, like you mentioned, win play show, 17% on pick 5s and pick 4s. So you're trying to stay as low as possible to keep everybody in the mix. We have the carryovers too. So early pick 4 to early pick 4, late to late, same with the pick 5s. We've already had 2 carryovers in the late pick 5s, and it's been due to the bigger fields and seeing some upsets. And then you get that potential for that free money kind of carrying over. So it's worth that look there on that Thursday afternoon or any afternoon, but really good card to close things out on Thursday. Same thing happens again on Sunday, and it looks like it's going to be a beautiful weekend. But we got 4 turf races out of our last 6 on Sunday, and I'm excited about that card too.
No, absolutely. And again, those Sunday cards definitely live up to it, because again, it's that, the later start time being at, 2 o'clock Central Time, 3 o'clock on the Eastern Post. So yeah, late, basically Del Mar and Hawthorne to look forward to, especially on a nice Sunday card.
Well, and that's what worked out last week. It was just one of those things where we positioned ourselves that's all it was. You had Del Mar going, we were going back and forth. It happened for about the last 4 races, and it gets a lot of eyeballs on your card, and maybe somebody who hasn't normally played the Hawthorne card gets familiarized with it, and then they kind of jump in, and knowing that we're going till mid-October, you still have a lot of racing action left.
Absolutely, my friend. Like I said, extremely better friendly, low takeout, bigger fields. Everything that bettors want is at Hawthorne Racecourse. So guys, please go check it out. And again, check out tomorrow's show Thursday night for Picks and Ponies, and then Saturday and Sunday mornings talking Saratoga today, and maybe now a little bit of Hawthorne Racecourse on those early morning Saturday and Sunday shows, my friend. But Jim, as always, thanks so much, my friend, for joining the show. Greatly appreciated. And like I said to everyone, please tune in tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern. Picks and Ponies covering a fantastic Whitney Stakes card at Saratoga, and Saturday morning, Sunday morning for Saratoga today's shows. And sign up for those power picks, people. HHH Racing Podcast.com. For my good friend and director of racing at Hawthorne Racecourse, Jim Miller. For my co-host Patrick, Charlie, and Noah, this has been your host Kyle Roscoe in episode 93 of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. And until next time, everybody, crush those bets, win those photos, and stay safe, everyone. We'll see you in the next one. Have a good night.